Time again for another installment of the basics, and on today's show I want to talk about tournament etiquette, and by that I mean things you should and you should not do when you attend CCG tournaments. There are a lot of unwritten rules, but there are a lot of things that are common sense, especially when you first walk up to the table and take your seat. So without any further ado, let me take you through some of these things. So it's your first CCG tournament. You're still taking it all in. The experience is really cool because you've never been to a tournament on this scale before. You might have done Friday Night Magic or card shop tournaments, but nothing really prepares you for a large-scale tournament. And one of the first mistakes that a lot of new players do is not so much that they bring extra cards in a box like this with them, it's the fact that they put the box of cards on the damn table. Don't do that. If you have to bring an extra box of cards or a small backpack with the box, put it underneath the table or beside your chair where it's not going to get in the way. A lot of long-time and veteran players do not like to see massive boxes on the table, myself included. It's a pain in the ass. If you haven't figured out your shit before you sat down at the table, that's your own fault. What you have to do is bring one or two deck boxes that have your deck in it and the cards that you need. Otherwise, if you really need to keep those boxes of cards with you, keep them under the table as I mentioned. You can always work on a deck in the time between games. Secondly, when you do sit down at the table and you're ready to start the round, you should only have the deck you need on the table. As well as you should only if the band have the amount of dice you need on the table. And this only applies to games like Magic and Pokemon, games that require counters and life and all that stuff. So you don't need a giant box or a giant container of dice sitting on the table either. If you have a small container, like a little plastic vial, maybe this big, that you can put there, that's fine. Or a handful of dice from a set. But you don't need hundreds or thousands of dice sitting on the table like some guys do. In most tournaments, you're only going to have enough space for you and your opponent, and if you use a playmat or not, and a couple extras. You don't need to have all this ridiculous shit on the table. Now, depending on the game you're playing, there are banned cards. And in some cases, even now, banned cards do get through in people's decks because some people just don't know any better, or they forget to take them out because they're getting hyped for the tournament. If the banned cards show up during gameplay, and I'm using Utot and Supernova here from the Star Trek card game because they're some of the worst banned cards, even though they shouldn't be. But anyways, your first instinct is to throw your hand up in the air and go, "Judge! Judge, this guy's using illegal cards." No, don't do that. Remind your opponent that it's an illegal card or two, because he might not even know he kept them in his deck. These things do happen. It's happened to me. Don't be a dick and start calling the judge in that tone of voice. Because, number one, the judges have to go around all the tables in the tournament. There's not a lot of judges. Number two, do they really want to deal with some whiny baby who has his hand up all the time? No. Remind your opponent, or he might even remind you that, hey, you can't use that card. Put it out of play. It's dealt with. If your opponent knows that it's banned and he says, "I don't care," that's when you call the judge, because that will affect the gameplay and the judge has to do something, either take the card or toss the guy. It's very simple. And one of the biggest things that happens in some tournaments, and you really want to avoid doing this. Now, you have to understand there's always talking during games. That's fine. Talking is fine. Talking about the gameplay is fine. Even stuff like, "Whoa, didn't see that coming," or "Hey, that's nuts." Anything like that's fine. But don't start bragging about your deck midway through the game. Nobody cares. And that denotes a certain level of arrogance. And a lot of players are not going to like that. And they're not going to like you if you keep going on about how great your deck is and how long it took you to build it. And, "Well, not to worry if I'm losing, bud, because my deck is so powerful, it's going to beat you in a few more turns." Don't do that. Don't be that guy going on about your deck. Okay? It's just common sense and common respect for all players involved. It all comes down to respect. that all being said, you need to treat every tournament as a learning experience, whether it's your first tournament or your 100th tournament. You're going to pick up things you didn't know before. You're going to make new friends and acquaintances. Don't be an arsehole, okay? It all comes down to respect. You have to have a healthy level of respect for your opponent, for everybody else in the tournament, as they will for you. That's all there is to it. And the things that I've shown you today on the show are just simple do's and don'ts that can help you maintain that level of respect at tournament play. And trust me, it's going to be a lot more fun with that level of respect in place. And it's as simple as that. That's all for today. Thanks for tuning in. Go out and do some tournaments when you're able. And have fun more than anything else. Have a great day.